Good afternoon. I'm Arthur Houtman. I'm CEO of Forcefield. Forcefield is a studio based in Amsterdam. We've been working with VR since 2014, and in 2015 we decided to make the jump and go 100% VR. And the talk that I'm going to give is a little bit of the experience of transferring from a traditional studio to a VR studio. So, what was our motivation? There's no viable consumer market as such for the moment, and there's still a lot of naysayers about VR who think it's just a fad like 3D TV. Short history of Forcefield gives you a little bit of an idea of why we made the change. We actually started life as Vanguard Games. Vanguard was a developer of console games. Our last game, Gatling Gears, was launched on PSN and XBLA. By the time it launched was 2011. The whole downloadable games market for $20, $30 fell apart and was definitely not the way to be going, and mobile was starting to run. So we said, okay, let's look at mobile. It's very comparable to what we've been doing in downloadable content for console. So we looked around for mobile and we managed to get a nice gig with the Halo franchise. And Microsoft was looking to port Halo over to mobile, and what we had been doing with Gatling Gears, which was a top-down twin-stick shooter, actually fit quite nicely with their vision, what they wanted to do with Halo. Great project, really very successful as well. Was a launch title for Windows 8 on Surface tablets and the Windows Phone at the time. And yeah, we had a good success with the first title. Microsoft asked for a second one. First Spartan Assault, then we went to Spartan Strike. But there were premium titles, meaning it was pay to own. So by the time the second title came out, pay to own wasn't that much of a thing. Of course, with the Halo title, it's quality and people still want to own it, so sales went well. But looking to do original content, premium was not the thing anymore. So we needed to look at the now emerging free-to-play market. We designed the first project called Base Busters. It was a kind of like inverse tower defense game. We thought we had it all figured out how free-to-play worked. We signed with a very good free-to-play publisher at the time, was Nexon. A lot of experience in Korea doing free-to-play. They had the Kart Rider project as one of the very early pioneering projects in free-to-play. So we didn't have that much experience. They knew a lot. We thought, great partner. But as it goes with first projects, metrics didn't really add up. They had a lineup of different projects, and their decision was to go with another project, put all their eggs in that basket, and Base Busters slowly died out. We did have a lot of experience of that. We said, okay, now we see a little bit how it goes with the syncs and how you really monetize with free-to-play. So we created a new project, which was codenamed Nightfall. Again, top-down, more of a strategy game. Seemed to fit better for what free-to-play players were looking for. We signed with a very big tech company that was looking to get into the free-to-play market. Great budget. We started development, but as it goes with very big companies, they change strategies quite easily. So halfway through the production, we got a phone call, 24th of December, Christmas present. They're canceling the project. They're canceling the whole strategy. And that was it for our Nightfall project. Luckily, we had negotiated a good contract, and we had a bit of a kill fee in there. So we continued developing, and in the new year, we started looking for a new partner, which we found. We continued working on it, but the vision got slightly changed again. And from the first partner who had one vision, we had our original vision. Now it was steered into another direction again. And it started to be a little bit of a problem child. The whole monetization design didn't feel right with our DNA of the studio. We like to design games, fun games, and the way you design for monetization is really looking into people's wallet and how can I get that last little euro out of the pocket. So we saw a little bit the thunderclouds in the sky, and we decided we needed to look at something new. Again, it felt like we were too late to the party there. And we looked at different things. iWatch was announced as something coming, as maybe a gaming device. You had the cloud, everybody was talking about, maybe something to do there. And VR. We ended up taking a serious look at VR. Why did we make the move? Our first look at VR was really promising. It looked like a fun platform, it looked like it had lots of potential for the future. So we said, okay, let's set up a new entity, not disrupt what we were doing with our free-to-play projects, and look at VR. So great, and we said, okay, let's see if we can find a job. We find a business-to-business job working for a company doing space tourism, or not doing it yet, but looking to do that. They were designing a shuttle to go into space with passengers, and we're looking for a way to interest investors, find people to buy tickets already, pre-sale tickets. So we made a really cool experience around that, had a little game chair with a rumble system under it and everything, really very successful. Working with VR was really fun. The team enjoyed it. It was a really breath of fresh air from what we were doing with the free-to-play market. So we said, okay, this is where we want to go. It's early in the market. We can be here now for once on the right side of the slope. So, but there was no real possibility to do business. So we were looking, how can we make something happen? Now, for once, a good call came through. We had a call from our producer with whom we worked on Gatling Gears. EA was our publisher at the time. He was at EA. He moved from EA to Oculus, and they were looking to exploring what kind of games are people interested in on the VR platform. Rift wasn't out yet. It was still DK2 as the latest platform. So they were looking for a top-down shooter. They'd seen, he had experience working with us at Gatling Gears, was very good. He'd seen what we've done with Halo, said this is exactly what we think could be fun in VR, kind of like tabletop game. So great, we talked to the team. Already some guys were working in their spare time, looking what can be done. And yeah, we made the decision, this is where we want to be. That project was Landfall, our first VR game for the Rift, consumer VR game. Really lots of fun, but it was a quite big project, so we needed a whole team, and we had that little side company, and by that time already, our effort on free-to-play had mainly died out. So we said, okay, this seems too good to be true. It's a real fit with us. It's actually a genre we know of. We loved working with VR, and that's where we said, okay, let's make the jump. We're going 100% over. So Vanguard Games became Force Field because we also wanted to make a clear statement that Force Field was a new VR company and not just a game company moving over. We thought there was a better message to the market. Fast forward to today. We've been really very busy. The company has doubled in size. We've already launched 7 projects to today. We've worked on high-end PC all the way to very low-end mobile. We've done a variety of genres, mostly games, but also ventured out in some other areas, educational and cultural projects. We've done an LBE project. So yeah, lots of different experiences there. And today we have 4 projects in production, 3 for a headset that's coming out next year, and 1 even that's looking far beyond to 2021. To give you a little bit of an idea of all the different things we've worked on, a little video. So as you see, quite some different projects way over the map. Great experience. We really managed to transfer the company from a top-down shooter expert to a VR, a company that has as main thing VR. So what changed for us during that transition? First, we needed to make some decisions in the studio, how we would set up, what would be the pipeline for working on VR. We had been working on our own engine. Halo was done with our own engine. We dabbed a little bit with Unity in the free-to-play. Clearly, VR was something else with all the technical requirements, how to perform well in VR. So we looked at all the middleware. Our own engine would have needed much too much changes, and we needed to move quickly because we needed to start prototyping right away. So because we have a team with quite good technical chops, Unreal was the one that fit our studio best. So we decided to go with Unreal. So that problem solved, we needed to look a little bit about what are the other things. Design and trying out different designs and then exploring things was really one of the important things. We needed to grow the team to do that. So we needed to have more designers on board. In the same time, we also wanted to get some more VR expertise on board. There were a lot of people that had been working with VR, so we wanted to headhunt some VR specialists to speed things up. So a big push on recruitment. Our technical infrastructure, of course, the last games we'd worked on were mobile games, and all of a sudden we had a lot more data to work with. The min spec for an Oculus Rift was definitely not what most our PCs were rigged up to do. So new graphics cards, with new graphics cards came new motherboards, CPUs, you name it. So the whole team got nice new PCs. Also dealing with a lot more data. Our builds became much bigger. So the build servers were upgraded, the capacity of our servers, even the network we upgraded. So that was also quite an investment. Next to that, as you've seen, we've also done some projects that had audiovisual components in it. We did live filming of actors in 3D, which we then wanted to integrate in our digital 3D world. Again, targeted at mobile. Of course, it's something that TV and film has been doing for a long time. Going on to mobile needed a little bit of a different pipeline. So again, renting out green screen studios and cameras and all the equipment was quite laborious, not very handy. We had the room. We decided to build a green screen studio inside our offices. So again, the studio, the walls themselves, the lighting, camera, tripods, you name it. Also a bit of an investment. So now we were set up technically to do that, and the other big changes, of course, and probably the main changes, were for the team. What were the challenges for designing in VR? Storytelling, a complete different set of things. We're used to being able to do cinematics, storyboard them out very clearly. What is the message we want to give? What do we want the player to understand? All of a sudden, the player was looking all over the place, and it was very hard to get the player to look at the right things. So that was very different for the design team. Also, voiceover, which normally we don't have too many problems believing when we're looking at a screen. All of a sudden, that voiceover was, "Hey, who is that? Where is he coming from?" People would expect, "Is it God? I don't see anybody up there." So again, a little bit of a challenge, how you bring over the story in VR. Motion sickness, again, something we've never had to deal with in any of our games, and all of a sudden that became a real thing. So the design team need to look at how you get around that. So again, something that the designers in the beginning, some of our early prototypes were very uncomfortable. User interface, also a complete new set of specifications we need to look at. You're not gluing a health bar and your coins up in the bottom, top of the screen anymore, or it's in the world and half the time you're not seeing the info you need, or you glue it to the headset and then people think, "Oh, what am I, a fighter pilot? I have some projection on my inside screen." So again, as much possible info needed to be inside the world to not break the immersion. So again, that was really a big rethink and unlearning a lot of things that we thought we knew. Hands are a thing. We just saw a great presentation from Leap Motion with hands. Now we needed to take hands into consideration with these controllers. We're so used to using hands in the real world that we expect them to work as they do in the real world. And in normal games, when we drop a gun and we need it again, we're okay with pushing a button and there it pops up again, or changing weapons or things like that. In VR, that completely breaks the immersion. If you drop something, you would expect to be picking it up again. So all those kind of things as well needed to be taken into consideration, and trying not to break the immersion with what we're doing. So for the design team, a lot of trial and error. There was really a lot of work on that side. Of course, we started working on a genre that we knew was definitely an advantage. And if anybody wants to switch over and has already existing game content, it's a good way to start, but also led us often into the wrong directions, because so many things we thought, okay, we know how that works. That'll work like that. That'll work like that. So getting tech involved early on, also a big thing. Normally, we're used to, okay, the guys working on Unity or even in Unreal can quickly start prototyping, making gray box prototypes, seeing if things work. Now, all of a sudden, okay, we need hands. Hey, how do we prototype those hands? We needed to create the tools. A lot of the SDKs are continuously evolving. Of course, now we're a couple of years earlier, but in the early years, that was really a problem, that before designers could actually start prototyping, we needed the tools to enable them to prototype. So getting feedback on what we were trialing, trying to see if it was successful, yes or no. Of course, we're used to, we know when we're developing games, at some time, you're so used to it, you don't see if A is better than B. You want to get user testing on its way. What you do, good luck finding a big group of people that have VR experience. And if they don't, the open mouth syndrome, we've seen so many images of people in VR with their mouth open. That doesn't help. When the first time you're sitting in VR, it's always really amazing, whatever you're looking at. And that's not very helpful. We're trying to see, is this better than that? Game jams, of course, always a thing. It's fun to do and is really good for a game studio. But here it really became really important for the team to learn new things and try out crazy things. It's really become part of our company culture to regularly hold game jams. Everybody can submit an idea, one-pager. Once they're all been submitted, everybody votes for the 3 best games. How we look at the scores, the 6 or 7 best games get selected to be executed on. Teams are formed according to everybody's preference where they want to work on. We actually close the company for a week and everybody goes on. Great fun, but also really good learning. Some crazy things have come out of that, and even some products that made it to the end. Coaster Combat, which you saw in the video, is actually a project that was a game jam idea, and which made it all the way, and has become one of our most successful projects on mobile VR. Developing for VR, just as challenging. The technicians, quite a challenge on performance. We're used to doing performance, of course, again, nothing new in game development, but now on a mobile platform, we're working on 60 frames a second, on a PC platform, 90 frames a second, and that per eye. So looking at the kind of performance we needed to hit for our early Gear VR titles that had a min spec of a Samsung S6, we needed to create 120 frames and still look decent. Something that's not in line with how we used to work on that. We have much less control over the camera. Often you can optimize, tech can look at a scene or an environment we've created, knowing more or less where the player is going to be when they're experiencing that, we can really optimize things. Again, not in VR. We had, with some of our top-down games, people were laying their head on the battlefield. Okay, it's another thing of performance. We have no control over what people are doing. Platform is continuously evolving. The SDKs, the technology that we're working with, it's really still in constant evolution. So when we begin a project, especially with our experience, we can give artists some specs. Okay, this is what you want to do. These are the amount of draw calls, polys, etc., etc. Halfway through the project, we can open it up more. as our business has become working for hardware manufacturers and making showcase software, we really need to push everything to the limit. So that means, okay, back to the drawing board for some of the assets and some of the ideas we had, because now we can push more. Platform cycles in VR look to be also much shorter, again, because of the whole fact that everything is continuously being worked on by so many tech companies. And I've never in my career seen so many companies involved in one technology. So the platform cycles in the past, console, 7 years was a safe bet. Once you had your tool set for PS4 or the Xbox, you knew you can get 2-3 cycles out of that tool set. Now all of a sudden, basically throwing everything away, or not everything, but it's hard to continue with the same tool set constantly. Creating art, as I said, focus on performance. Optimizing every asset from the beginning is really important, not something we just look at the end. We really need to spend a lot more time on most of the assets. Realism versus fantasy. Again, the part of immersion is really important. We know how difficult it is to make believable characters. Now they're characters which you're interacting with, and you expect them to really have realistic interactions. Finding that middle ground where you want to be between a fantasy world and a real world and still feel that the player is in a believable experience, also quite tough. And the visual effects, we're all used to seeing explosions, gun muzzles, flares, you name it, to a certain quality. If you want to make your VR game to that same quality, you need to approach the same quality of effects. So all of a sudden art, of course, the tools we used to use and the way we used to make effects don't work anymore. So doing things like static specular reflections becomes a thing. If we have a world within the distance, a lot of action going on, a lot of movement or explosions or a battlefield, now we're baking everything into the background as one big animation. So a lot of different things to try out and to learn how to keep that frame rate high. And despite all the above, it's always very hard to get away with faking things. Having a palm tree that looks great from top down, maybe it's a very small person that's playing this high from the tabletop. So now they're looking at a complete different angle at your assets. So maybe from the top, the palm tree leaves look nice, but maybe it was completely flat, and all of a sudden you can't see the palm tree anymore when you go down. So really, a lot of trial and error there as well to try to get everything right. Who would have thought that testing would have been a lot more difficult in VR? People do crazy things in VR that we're not really controlling. And trying to test all these things, that guy with his head on the table, he might crash the game. We need to try and simulate all the different things people could be doing in a game. A lot more work required for our VR people. Then our brain is an amazing thing. It adapts to everything. I mentioned nausea in the beginning. Our QA testers and also the developers spending a lot of time in VR are getting used to it and don't get sick anymore, which is a good thing for the VR industry, a bad thing when you're testing games that are supposed to be comfortable for new adapters. It's a bit like sitting in a sailboat for the first time. People easily get sick. Once you've been on a sailing trip for a longer sailing trip, you get used to it, you get your sea legs, and now you don't have that same problem. We're experiencing the same thing in VR. And again, very unexpected, so our QA people are having more difficulty evaluating if it's comfortable or not. Luckily, we have some very sensible people in the studio who seem to never get used to it, so those are the unlucky ones that get all these trials. Performance measuring also very difficult. Normally it's quite easy to see if a game is 30, 60 frames on a screen. Racing game is quite apparent very quickly if you're just playing the game. Now 60 frames to 50 or 90 to 80, hard to detect. So we needed really to create tools that gave us the possibility to find out where the performance drops were. Automated testing is already a thing of today. We need to create some specific tools. When the test team leaves the office, the server room is filled with headsets, and all these pre-calculated scripts run. In the morning we come, we see all the nice little reports, and we got an idea not only where drops occur, but also a good idea what's causing them. And then last, when you're blindfolded, it's really hard to work on your PC. So logging bugs, also a little bit more laborious. Even for producers, VR is different. We mentioned before that UI and performance are a really important thing. A lot of projects, it's only in the second half of the project often that you seriously start building your menus, your UI and everything. And performance also. We'll optimize at the end. That's not an option anymore. We have different priorities now, and the producer needs to look at those priorities in a different way. So putting performance all the way to the front and even starting UI together with the design team. Okay, how are we going to be putting this in the world? Really important. So what we're used to as on the planning side, what our priorities are, definitely change. We need to be a lot more flexible as well. As I said, we're trialing and erroring all the time. We're finding out things that we didn't suspect. This works. No, it doesn't. That will work. Yes, it does. So we need to also create some flexibility in our milestone schedules. What we do now is every milestone, we actually set what content will be delivered in the next 2 or 3 milestones. So you need more flexibility in that schedule as well. We need scheduling to be more generous, as I said already, the art. Creating the assets to a great level of detail and very optimized is more laborious. I don't know exactly, it will depend as well on the kind of game you're building, but 1 hour of gameplay for, let's say, our top-down games to 1 hour of gameplay, a top-down game in VR, definitely VR takes a lot more time. So that's also something when you're scheduling for the first time in VR, get a good margin extra on top of that because you're going to be using that. So last, most important, is there any real business to be made in VR or is it all virtual? We've been able to make a sustainable business, getting ourselves in a niche where we're making showcase software. We work a lot with Oculus, we work with some other companies as well. And you saw us making a headset for self-driving cars even. We've done a lot of different things. Developers that are successful outside of our little business model are people who go multi-platform. The ones that I know that are really successful go to all the platforms available. And this is also something you want to look at the beginning, because from a PSVR to a Rift to a Vive, very different controls, and you need to take that on board right away with your game design. And I think it's more or less common knowledge that a platform needs to reach about 10 million installed base for it to be profitable. All these platforms together still are not achieving 10 million units. So looking at multi-platform development right away is really important. We also have a better idea who's spending money now. It's a lot of fun to make all these different projects, casual games, this and that. We know today that the people who are spending money are, surprise, surprise, the core gamers. They're used to spending a lot of money on hardware, on peripherals. They're used to spending 40, 50 bucks for the software. And these are the people that we also see spending the money in VR. So making a project, also look at who you're targeting, and to be successful financially, these are definitely the people you need to look at. Diversifying into other genres. There was a talk earlier from Noel Falstein about the medical applications possible, also in VR. We've been doing things in education, we've been doing some cultural projects. Again, not only great fun, but also helped us make the ends meet at the end of the month, doing all these kind of projects. Also gave us a wealth of knowledge doing different things. And then because VR is still a very innovative technology, also look at grants and subsidies. There's a lot of national and European and American programs that you might be able to apply to. If you're doing something a bit innovative, you can get some money out of there. We've been successful with some of the R&D work we've done at getting extra funding that way. So, should I make the jump just now, or should I wait? As some of you might have seen a couple of years ago, John Riccitello from Unity had a presentation talking about the gap of disappointment. The gap of disappointment. In the beginning 2015, VR was hyped up like crazy. Would have been the fix all for all the world's problems. It would be really the thing. Throw away your TVs. VR was going to be, as we were all going to be walking around. That, of course, the people involved in VR, the headset people, the developers, knew that that wasn't going to happen. And at a certain moment, once all the devices were launched, we would see not the same numbers that our friends, the analysts, were selling to all the investors who wanted to invest in there. So that steady curve that everybody always likes to predict, it's good for your P&L and making your business case to investors. That wasn't going to happen. I think today that we're at the rock bottom of that gap of disappointment and that we're slowly going to come up. Why do I think that? I think the problem for VR, the really high quality, the real VR, the 6 degrees of freedom 6 DoF experience, is too expensive on one hand, and it's not user-friendly. Some of you who might have tried setting up a Vive, it's a really fun little tutorial, but drilling holes in your walls to put the lighthouses in and things like that, not really very user-friendly, and also tripping over the wires and stuff like that. Also not something that I think is very user-friendly. So coming soon, it's been announced last week, the Oculus Quest is the first completely mobile 6 DoF headset. No wires, no installing cameras, it's inside-out tracking, you have your 2 hands, you can get the depth, you can lean into your worlds. We've been working with this technology for about 1.5 years. It's really a game changer. It's really fun. You can walk around the room, depending on if you have a lot of coffee tables to trip over. But last week I've experienced it in a 400 square feet space where Dead and Buried was being played 3 against 3 with these headsets. On the other side was the Void. Leap Motion talked about them earlier. Fantastic experience, but there's about $1 million of equipment in there. These 3 against 3 matches where basically everybody had a headset on, which is announced to be launched next year for $399. So that's coming. Still a lot of money to spend $400 on a VR headset, but definitely different from the $1,000, $1,500 you need to invest now if your PC isn't up to spec. Another area to keep an eye on and keep looking at is AR. Of course, the AR had great experiences here outside the door as well with wargaming. It's fun, but it's not really handy. Just give me my little world on my laptop, on my device where I can play in, and walking around like this and trying to hold your phone so you're not putting your fingers in front of the camera and trying to click on the things. It's fun to do for a while, but I can't see myself playing like that for hours. So we're really waiting for these AR headsets. There's a lot being launched. Leap Motion was, not Leap Motion, sorry. the Magic Leap was launched this year. The HoloLens has been around for some time. It shows the way we're going, but these headsets are between $2,000 and $3,000. Definitely not consumer kit yet. It is coming. Last week, Michael Abrash, known from Quake, is one of the head technicians for Oculus, and he predicts that the technology will be converging between VR and AR in about 4 or 5 years. We'll get lighter headsets. Headsets will be able to be switched over from AR to VR. So that is really the kit we're looking for. So yeah, that's a little bit where I see the changes coming up over the next couple of years. So when is the right time to make the jump? I wouldn't just bet the farm on it just now, but I would start exploring. If you have the possibility in your studio to set a team aside and start experiencing what can be done with VR. What is your best franchise or the kind of games you're working on? What are the possibilities for VR there? Definitely something to do, and maybe start preparing a game for launch in 2020 or 2021. There you go. That's my little presentation. Well, we're within time. Any questions? Once, twice.
Have you, excuse me, have you looked into any military applications or sort of government-funded stuff?
No, not yet.
Why?
No.
And why? Especially if you're in the States, there's a lot of money spent.
We're more, yeah, it's definitely a market. The Leap Motion talked a lot about military applications as well. We still like to see ourselves as an entertainment company. So going military, we've had discussions. When we started in VR, we also thought 360 movies would be something interesting. We actually had a little media department, drove us completely nuts, all that kind of stuff. We're used to having maybe weekly calls with our publisher, quick touch up. Every 6 to 8 weeks we would deliver content and have a talk about it. Now all of a sudden you were doing projects for 50 grand where people will be sitting in your office every two days wondering if it should be red or black. So we purposely moved away from everything that's business to business. Our first project was a business to business project. The one we did with the self-driving car was really fun because what they wanted to do, we did it together with Ubisoft. Renault launched their, I think it's the level 4 or 5 self-driving cars, which means eyes off. So you're not responsible anymore for anything the car does. The people you bought your car from will take over that responsibility. To demo that, they wanted to have something to really drive the point home to the journalists. And so somebody came up with a crazy idea, let's give them a VR headset while they're driving in the car. So we did that. That was a fun B2B project. There was decent budget as well attached. We were working with a game company, and that was fun to do. Do we want to go into automotive and start making showroom applications for people to choose their cars? There's already companies doing that. Zero Light is one that's been very successful there. But we want to stay in what we know best and what we enjoy doing, which is entertainment.
In your if you stay within the same platform, are the platforms backward compatible? Is for a game? Say you develop a game and then the Oculus Rift turns into the Oculus Quest. Is a game that worked on the Oculus Rift still going to work on the Quest, or do you have to completely readapt it?
I don't. The controllers are the main thing that it's all about. Our top-down game couldn't work with the touch controllers. We developed that before the touch controllers were a thing. That's the main thing. The Quest to the Rift, they want every Quest game will probably also be releasing on Rift. Up to the developer to say, okay, now I have a lot more power on the PC. I can make my graphics look better. I can do other things with it. But basically, those two will be compatible. PlayStation VR, where it is now with the Move controller, is definitely not created for VR. It's no secret that they've already announced that they're working on the next generation of VR for PlayStation 5. There's going to be another kind of a controller there and probably a lot more power to work with. So for the moment, as I said, those cycles are so quick. There's so much development going on in the resolution of the screens, in the way we interact with it, in the way we render the scenes. In eye tracking will be a thing at a certain moment. Maybe we'll throw out the controllers and have Leap Motion on all the things. So it's evolving too quickly to be really 100% backwards compatible. But the base concepts, something like Beat Saber, for example, really successful. The concepts that work only in VR, you'll be able to continue to port that. Something like the climb as well, you can't experience that on any other platform, the climbing game. So those things, and then still, I think the Spielbergs of the VR world still need to be born, maybe. But it's definitely something that once you have a real good concept that works in VR, I think it will be backwards compatible to anything.
Hello, thank you for your talks. From your point of experience, how do you think the perspective of VR in esports?
In esports, already doing it. I saw FPS being played in esports last week in San Jose, the Oculus Connect event. It's not for the viewers. It doesn't change a lot. I think it's mainly for the players, and I think viewers are what counts more in esports for the moment. So yeah, it's definitely going to come. Another thing is the Lone Echo or the Echo Arcade or Challenge or something. They've made also an esports thing out of that. That is something that is only possible in VR. It's you're in space and you have the weightlessness as the main feature that you can't experience in another platform. And there's actually competition going on there, and it was fun to watch because it looks really weird when you're seeing these people playing these games. But yeah, I see esports being a big part of that once the market's big enough, and then yeah. Question is, will you be watching it on a flat screen, these competitions, or is there a way to actually follow esports in VR? And that'll be another challenge. Okay, that's a wrap. Oh, in the back.
Okay, it will be a little bit prolong my question. So let me explain, please. I heard that VR games is a little bit complicated to pay for all day compared with PC games. I suppose that it's impossible to spend 8 hours or 9 or even more like usual players, or okay, whales, they play. And there is a correlation between all day spending in the game, yeah, session, and revenue. Like people who play more, they spend more. But in VR games, there is our brain barrier, in my opinion, physiology one, that you can play around like 1 hour, maybe longer, 2 hours. So what do you think? Is it affect revenue or not?
The question is if you can play as long in VR games as in traditional games? There's already been some Guinness Book of Records made in VR, I believe, some crazy people. But it is more intense. Again, inside a company, people sit a lot with headsets up on their face. I could see it being more tiring. Yeah, it depends also what kind of game it is. At the same time, gaming is of course a thing where probably after an hour you want to take a little break. It's also advised. But they're also making, and what is actually quite successful, I'm hearing, are meditation projects where people just sit in the VR headset for hours and just chill out. So it depends on the content, I think, and on the comfort level of the headset. I think some headsets are more comfortable than others, and it depends on heat as well. If it's really hot, it gets more uncomfortable. If you're doing something like, what is it, Sprint Vector, where you're running like this, it's a competition. After 5 minutes, you're sweating inside your headset, and you really want to take it off. So I think it depends on the kind of game. But I could say that, yes, it's because you don't have the possibility to look next to your screen, to grab your drink, and to be distracted a moment. You're never distracted. You're 100% focused on what you're looking at all the time. So I think that higher intensity is probably making it less obvious that you're going to spend a whole day in the headset.
I have a question. Would you say, considering that you have quite a variety of experience in different VR experiences, do you see more future of VR in entertainment like gaming or in utility software?
I think VR more entertainment. I think utility is going to go more to AR. I think it's more logical. In utility, you want to see your world. So most of you who have experienced Halo, it's really interesting to see that somebody on the other side of the ocean could be drawing on your world and pointing out things to do. I think tutorials and all that kind of stuff looks better for AR, and VR is really because yes, now you're all closed off and you're not aware of what's around you anymore.
There are still some simulations like healthcare, or I'm not sure about the name, where you can see like the internal organs, the structure, and basically things that would require, that would be much riskier to do in real life, even with AR, than in VR, or maybe some remote operations.
Possibly, yeah, possibly with the possibility to walk around, because if you would see a body, yeah, walking around that and things like that in VR could be interesting. But again, I don't think it's impossible to do with AR. And also, when you're looking to more utility applications, you're probably also looking more at not being on your own when you're doing it, and that's definitely interesting in AR. Even though AR, a multiplayer experience, is really something to another level. Things I've experienced in the HoloLens, where multiple people are walking around the same world, see each other, and could point things and discuss things. I think that's really strong in AR.
And another thing, if you don't mind, of all the challenges you've mentioned, what would you think the primary change that should happen to VR or VR development in order to mitigate these challenges?
More comfortable headset.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So what do you see about the monetization in the VR? So I think now it's primarily premium games.
Yeah, it's pay to own, yeah, for the moment.
Do you think the free-to-play will come to VR?
Hopefully, I'm not too crazy about free-to-play from my previous experience, but why I'm hoping for that is because free-to-play needs a giant market. As we know, free-to-play games monetize less than 5% of the user base. We've even seen that we have done some experiences on the Gear VR. A Ghost of Combat game was launched, first module that was free, and then you can buy more tracks. It matches completely with what we see in free-to-play. So yeah, hopefully we'll get a big enough user base to be able to do that. On that side, Gear VR is one of the biggest platforms installed. It's way over 5 million, 6, 7, I don't know how many. But 95% of the people who have a Gear VR got it for free with the Samsung phone, and they are not spending any money, and they don't even know where the headset is most of the time. So yeah, it's hopefully it will come, because it will mean that the market's grown.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. This is now the second wrap. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the event.